and welcome to this session on what will drive future growth and what will not. I am Maya Hajej, Senior Business Anchor at Asharq with Bloomberg, and I will be moderating this session today. This is the last session of the day, so I hope you've got a lot of information from the whole day and from yesterday to share with us. Please, if you need to use the hashtag AMGFCC25 whenever you are discussing or referring to these meetings, and feel free to do so. So we talk about global growth, and it's expected to hover around 3.2% over the next few years. And yesterday, with the revised IMF report on growth, it's also 3.2 for the next year, even though they tried to increase it a little bit, but still, there's a bit of a struggle. So where should we look for the next real engines of growth? What are the breakthroughs, policies, mindsets that will move us forward? Which ones might turn out to be distractions or just a hype? And I hope no one's going to say AI. So far, it's proved itself so far, but we'll see where it will take us. I'm delighted to be joined by an exceptional panel of thinkers and doers from very different worlds: finance, sustainability, academia, and media. So let me introduce them to you. I will start with my far left, Mr. Jay Lee, Director, Industrial AI Center at the University of Maryland, a pioneer in industrial artificial intelligence, helping define how data, automation, and smart systems are rewriting productivity. Welcome. Marion Labour, the Managing Director and Macro Strategist at Deutsche Bank. She brings the economist lens on how capital, productivity, and demographics converge to shape tomorrow's global economy. Sir Andrew Steer, Distinguished Professor of Practice, Georgetown University, a leading voice on sustainability and former head of the Bezos Earth Fund, with deep insights into how environmental economics can drive growth. And Stacey Vanek-Smith, Senior Story Editor at Bloomberg Audio, a global journalist who translates complex economic trends into human stories, reminding us that growth is not just a number, but a lived experience. So when we talk about this, we'll divide our session. It's a 45-minute session. Hopefully, we'll keep the last 10 for the audience because we're interested about their questions. But we'll start with the economy. We'll talk about sustainability. We'll talk about intelligence and about the people. We'll start with you, Marion, to begin with. When global growth is slowing to traditional levels, like when we talk about consumption and population, how should we be redefining growth? Should we be looking at it from a different lens?
I don't think we should look at different lenses. And actually, you were mentioning earlier the IMF revision, which is getting slightly more optimistic. Mm-hmm. And actually, if I look at our Deutsche Bank provision for this year and next year, we are also forecasting 3.1% GDP for this year and next year. So we are almost well aligned with the IMF. And actually, these revisions came from a couple of factors. First, I would say the US economy is doing much better than what most people were expecting. When I mean much better, I mean if we look at financial conditions, it's much better. We are also expecting the Fed, and it's the same for the consensus, the Fed to cut interest rates by 50 bips by the end of the year. If we look at tariffs, it has been less than we were expecting in terms of negative impact. The demand in the US is also still high, and we still expect a deficit to be like around 6.5% of GDP during all the years under Trump. We still have a record high when we look at the stock market. I'm thinking about the S&P 500. Mm-hmm. If I look at on the Chinese side, it looks like the Chinese government made a big stimulus package since the beginning of the year to sustain demand as well. Yes, yeah. And the Chinese economy was also less impacted than what we feared in April.
So are we ignoring any of the macroeconomic signals? Is anything being overlooked today? Is there anything that we should focus on when we look at the future, drivers of the future?
So the biggest drivers that we are looking at now is uncertainty. Okay. We are unsure what's going to happen. When I mean uncertainty, we have a lot of different types of uncertainty. The first one is on tariffs, trade. Not everything has been solved, especially with China. The second uncertainty that we are seeing is geopolitics. We have a lot of area where we have conflict. I'm thinking about Russia, Ukraine. We don't expect a near-term solution looking ahead.
India, Pakistan also.
India and Pakistan. Let's see how it evolves. Middle East. Let's see phase 2, how it's happening. We have Taiwan as well. Taiwan, China, US is also a big area, especially given the Taiwanese economy is almost entirely based on TSMC. TSMC is one of the biggest producer of semiconductors. TSMC represents like more than half of the production of semiconductors and more than 90% of the most advanced semiconductors. So it will be a huge impact if something happened around Taiwan. We also have Greenland, obviously, so many areas where we have some geopolitical conflict. Climate change, we also have aging population, debt sustainability as well.
So we'll get to climate change later, but I'll jump to Jay and mention something that you've discussed before about AI, how it is changing industries, and not only that, the DNA of productivity. What do you mean by that, and where are you seeing measurable changes that could be future drivers?
Well, today when we talk about AI, it's really about new AI. The old AI has been there for over 60 years, right? Machine learning has been there 30 years. So, but good things about new AI give people very good inspiration and excitement. So that take the good movement to, in fact, to turn the attention to old AI, how to apply to legacy systems. For example, if we take what we have today, traditional things, where we do AI is new frontier. Algorithm, big data, computing, ABC. Then you got data center, electricity, A, B, C, D, E naturally, right? But that's what the first path is.
Okay.
It's called AI infrastructure. So what you see today, AI infrastructure is growing. That take the energy industry, the biggest growth right now, right? But if you take the product, AI product is coming. ABC, then you have a device. D and H, AI phone, AI glass, AI watch, AI car, right?
AI human.
Yeah, human. So, but there are certain things that you need to look at the reality issue, not just a possibility issue.
Okay.
But the third area is called domain growth. I don't think we have started yet. Vertical domain, right? You have domain, healthcare domain. You have a aerospace domain, you have the energy domain, and you have a manufacturing domain. Those is coming. To me, AI right now, we spend too much time about AI infrastructure. The real growth really is a domain area.
So how do you see this growth coming? There's a lot of talk about AI, it's hyped up. Isn't there a bit of fatigue related to it? How do we separate this hype from genuine transformation that we are expecting?
Well, we have to look at the baseline and also the growth. But if you look at the new area, we have lots of we call the demand-driven. Oh, we need a more data center. Today, if you look at worldwide, last year we used a 47 gigawatt data center power worldwide, right?
Okay.
But today you build one big, like a Stargate, 1.2 gigawatt, right? Even more. So US used about 500 gigawatt last year, total US, but the data center only about 28 gigawatt to 30. So eventually you look at the growth, but those areas really called investment. We have not seen enough growth yet because no ROI.
So we haven't seen it yet. So
we haven't seen that yet, right?
When do you expect that we would see it reflected on economical growth?
That's where the domain is, right?
Yeah. So when we go into other verticals, which is the one that is coming up next? Because you did mention healthcare, you did mention a few other things. Which one is the one that is a priority today?
Well, they're all very important,
okay.
But I think depending on industry. If you look at the medical healthcare area, there's a lot of data-driven stuff. All the images, which is great for AI to help doctor, help patient. But they're also a very low traditional area, manufacturing. And AI augment area, which can help productivity. So I think each verticals, there are also some gaps can grow. So we should pay attention to these areas. Yeah.
Okay, so I will keep going back to you, Marion, before we move on. When do you think that we could see this tangibly in the numbers when it comes to economy?
We are already seeing it in November. I mean, if I look at the S&P 500, we are reaching a new record high almost every week.
With the companies that are investing in AI.
Yes.
And we are looking at how much they're investing in AI.
A lot of investment. And actually, if I look at the S&P 500, a third of the market cap is made by the Magnificent Seven. So we are clearly seeing the investment in the data.
In the companies, but we will see it in the economy eventually.
Where we are seeing it in the financial market, on the stock market, definitely. But we are not seeing it, I fully agree, on the use cases. So what you call vertical domain, I call it use cases. We are not seeing it. Productivity gains, we are not seeing it.
Okay, Sir Andrew, I don't want to be a bit controversial now when I ask you this, but hasn't all this hype about AI and how it's affecting the economy overshadowed our talk about sustainability and climate change? Because you always argue that this is an investment in our future. It's not a high cost, it's an investment. What do you think?
Well, I think AI is going to help us solve the sustainability issues. Indeed, I mean, we're already starting to see what that will do for a whole range of issues. On the nature side, for example, we will use AI to identify species we don't know that exist. We'll be using AI to see what's happening on the ground, changing land patterns. We'll be using AI to develop artificial proteins from the 300 million proteins that already exist. So I don't see this as a competition. I see it as a potential great blessing, albeit we spend more time talking about its dangers and its hunger for electricity. But I think overall, I think it's going to be a blessing. But I did want to just come back to the issue of growth. If we really want secrets into the future of growth, we should ask, you know, why did these three economists 2 days ago win the Nobel Prize in economics?
Innovation.
And it's all about innovation, but there are some insights. I mean, if you look at sort of Joel Mokyr, who's the historian, he said, yes, you absolutely need the traditional belief that you need science leading to technology, but even more important, you need a culture that welcomes disruptive change and expects great things to happen. You know, and there's a lot of insights in that for us, is because there's a real risk at the moment that we're going to stop expecting growth, that we're going to be less tolerant to disruptive change, and we need to be more. And then, of course, the other two won it for their work on if you like, creative destruction. And their point is, of course, that's Philippe Aghion, especially, great French economist who also has the LSE, where I'm also a professor there now. So we're very proud of him, but I think you deserve more credit. And I went to LSE. But, you know, I mean, his point is that essentially, why is capitalism such a good system? It's because out of destruction comes new life. And out of, as Borga Brendi was saying this morning, out of the dot-com bubble burst came, you know, most of the Magnificent Seven sort of thing. And so in other words, countries and cultures that embrace that fact, that don't allow their big corporations to grow so big that they can stop other competition, those that have venture capital a culture, they will thrive. And that's why America is actually continuing, despite all of its crazy policies, is continuing to innovate more rapidly than Europe. And so, but whilst we ought to be saying, what's the next big thing? You know, is it yeah, but there are cultural issues and there are perceptual issues which will be much more important, I believe. So
where do you think this culture is being cultivated? If you were to invest, say, $1 in driving something towards the future, which area of the world would you put it? And say you have more than one area that you would like to invest in. why would it be that area, and why would you put your money there to invest in the growth in future drivers?
Yeah, I'd pick a place where I think there is a hunger for change, and there's a willingness to take risk, and there is a young people who have an entrepreneurial spirit. When I went to university in the United Kingdom, if you were in the smart half of the class, you'd go and work for the government. And oh, I'm sorry, you had to go and work for the private sector. You know, and we felt sorry for them. Well, I wouldn't invest in a country like that. I would now go and Africa is incredible. I mean, it was so making a link again to climate and sustainability. Yes. It was so inspiring a couple of years ago at the Africa Climate Summit, where President Ruto and the others, they said, you know, yeah, we're a victim of climate change, but my goodness me, we are also the solution. We have more land than anybody else, more sun than anybody else, more minerals than anybody else, and above all, we've got more young people who are out there, they're going to invest. And that's what I would be looking for.
So we'll ask another question, but this time not to Mario, but also when we speak about factoring this into the economy, when we talk about the resilience and sustainability of economies, where do you see the opportunity, and where do you see we will feel it in the numbers moving in the future? Will we feel these opportunities?
Well, if we keep having the current policies towards climate change, we will see a decline in growth. And, you know, one of the great sort of intellectual journeys of the last 20 years has been that we used to believe, and rightly, that if we address climate change and sustainability issues, our economy may slow because it was so expensive, and you'd lose competitiveness, you'd lose jobs. That 30 years ago was right because the price of renewable energy and the price of everything else was so high on the green side of things. Now, because we've learned a lot and because technology's come down, we now know there's a totally different growth story. And the growth story says if we act boldly and wisely on climate change, we will have more economic efficiency because we'll use resources more efficiently. We will drive new technology, and that opens up entirely new ideas of growth. We will lower risk because we'll know what the future is going to look like, and we'll reshape expectations about the future. And reshaped expectations is exactly what a future economy needs to look like. And by the way, we will have cleaner air, we'll be healthier, we won't have so many sick days, and that will also help the economy.
Mario, I will get back to you. When do you think this could be factored in the numbers? Talk about sustainability and climate resilience.
It's a tough question.
Okay. All right, fair.
It's a very tough question. And I think when you ask me about the impact of factoring kind of geopolitics on climate change, I think the first thing that we should think of is how to make our economic growth more resilient. And it's what we've seen since April, this trade war, tariff war between on one side the US and on the other side most countries, including China. We've seen that China has clearly the monopoly on a lot of minerals, including rare earth metals, that are needed in most technology. We need rare earth metals for defense, for technology, for AI. And on the other side, you have the US, who has the monopoly on the most advanced chips, and especially the IP. And I think if we want to overcome geopolitics, we need to have like a strong economy which is resilient on one side, and also which has the capacity to overcome shock. And if I look at what's going on now, I mean, we have such a high level of debt. We have in so many countries with a debt which is higher than 100%. I'm thinking about Japan, obviously, but I mean, the US, it's not getting better. And again, we expect the US deficit to be like between 6-7% over the next 4 years. So it's not going to be much better. In Europe, I mean, if I look at the UK, France, Italy, it's not better as well. And you need to have this buffer, this fiscal buffer, especially with what's going on in the world, if we want to increase our defense capacity, if we want to overcome any shock, if we want to stimulate the economy to spend more, we need to have some more leverage, fiscal leverage as well.
Jay, I would like to factor in technology and AI into talk about sustainability and climate change. How much do you think that will help also in driving us to the future?
Well, certainly that will push us to balance more alternative energy source, right? So how we increase the innovation actually in this area, right? So if you look at the global landscape, there still have a lot of rooms to improve efficiency, right? Even today in data center, right? 20 to 40% is the power efficiency, power consumption, power efficiency, and also thermal dissipation. If you look at the three areas, a big room to change, technology.
Stacy, we've covered economy, technology, climate change, and sustainability. Let's talk about the people now, and human behavior and policy. So you cover how people feel about the economy, not only the numbers. Let's talk about that a little bit. What do you mean, how people feel?
Well, I was interested in something that came up earlier, which is uncertainty, and how that's kind of holding back growth right now. And I think there is uncertainty in two parts of the economy. First, I mean, I'm from the US, where consumer spending is the driver of economic growth. It's most of our economy comes from people buying stuff. And when people are feeling less confident, they
don't buy.
They buy less stuff. And the American consumer fuels a huge part of the global economy. 16% of the global economy is Americans buying stuff. Now tariffs are getting in the way of that. There's a lot of uncertainty over policy as far as tariffs and other things. So I think there's a lot of uncertainty and fear right now in the US economy. And I think globally, a lot of countries that have very deep and lucrative trade deals with the US are now completely questioning, rerouting those trade agreements, having to basically reform their economies and create new trade alliances and trade deals because of these shifting policies. So I think there's a lot of global uncertainty, and within the country that I know the best, which is the US, a lot of uncertainty there as well.
So, I mean, this would really take us in the direction of globalization and how the world is changing and how that world is changing. But I don't want to dive into that. Let's stay within the drivers of tomorrow's future and future economies and talk about storytelling. Does storytelling also factor into that? Does storytelling, or would it have an effect on the drivers? Will it help in driving when we tell these stories of economy, of technology, and of climate? How can we drive it to help?
Well, I think the big story that we're all talking about right now is AI. I mean, there is so much uncertainty on one side and changing policies. And those stories are sort of shifting. We don't know how those stories are going to pan out. The story of AI, I think, is quite exciting. And we also don't know how that's going to play out. I think there's a lot of investment, enormous investment. There's the Magnificent Seven. And also, I think people and companies are extremely excited about the possibilities, also worried about what's going to happen to jobs. But I think that story is very exciting right now in the global economy and painting a potentially very exciting future full of possibilities. And then there's another story about trade and sort of shifting relationships that is a little bit of maybe a darker story.
So let's talk about this darker story, because we are talking about what's driving the economies and what is driving growth and what is not. What is not driving growth in your opinion?
I mean, I think the uncertainty is pulling back growth and tariffs, quite frankly. I mean, free trade has its issues, but I think for a long time it was such a driver of economic growth and relationships and prosperity and wealth. That is changing really fast, almost by the day. And I think that is telling a story of great uncertainty. We don't know how things are going to shift, but there is a lot of shifting going on.
So when we talk about this uncertainty and all this shifting, and please feel free to jump in at any time. When Marian mentioned a few minutes ago that these tariffs have not really had the effect that was expected, is the reason because they are delayed a little bit, or is it because, tell me.
Sorry, if I can jump on it, I didn't say, I just said the effect was less
than expected,
Than expected.
Okay.
Yes.
Sir Andrew, you wanted to say something. You wanted to jump in.
No, not on this.
Not on that point. So, do you think, and this question is for everyone, do you think that when we look at drivers, do you think optimism alone will help us? Because everyone here seems very optimistic. I mean, even the uncertainty is not a big driver as much as, it's not a big scare as much as we thought. Do you think optimism in itself will help us move forward? Feel free, anyone to...
No, I mean, not on its own, no.
Okay.
I mean, I think there are other... You said what's slowing down growth? I mean, certainly in much of Europe, but even in parts of America, an over-regulation of investment. Famous book that I'm sure many people have read came out last year, Abundance, an American book, and it has the famous story about how in California, for the last 40 years, they've been trying to build a high-speed railway line from San Francisco to Los Angeles, and it's not been built because there are so many regulations, so many permitting, and now the current governor has said, look, you know, it seems too difficult. In that same period when not one railway line was built, China built 23,000 kilometers of high-speed line. And now in the UK, we have this serious problem of over-regulation, and the government has said that. And we, on the environmental side, and all the other good guys, have made sure that every single regulation has a good reason.
Okay.
You know, none of it's wicked, but if you add them all together, you just can't get things done. And so we need to revisit how we think about regulation. And the environmental movement, of which I'm proud to have been part of, we're to blame partly because environmentalism was built up around the idea of stopping bad things happening.
Okay.
It was all about pollution, you know, so we've got to stop things happening. The problem is in today's world, you have to actually do things. You've got to do good things, and that takes bravery and risk-taking and a different regulatory environment.
And risks, maybe, you have to take,
Yes.
there are risks to be taken. Marion?
Yeah, in terms of risk, I would say, to come back to your point, clearly uncertainty is the biggest one.
Yeah.
With geopolitics, we don't know what's going to happen in the rest of the world over the next coming month. And clearly tariff trade, President Trump tweeted last Friday, so we are still unsure, and nothing is fixed forever.
He said something on Friday that moved the whole market, and then he went back on it on Monday morning. I mean, he took it half back, and then we saw the market. Yeah. So does the world really need to still react this hard, and whenever something like that happens?
I think in my macro world, the world reacts less than it used to be since January, less and less, I would say. I mean, it's still reacting, but less and less over time. But on the negative side, given that you asked for the risk, if I look at the US economic growth, actually, the main component now responsible for economic growth has been AI capex. So if we remove the AI capex, the economy, the American economy, would have been flat so far.
Okay.
So it's a big driver. And one of my worries is when I look at all this AI investment, there are so much circularity. Every company is now investing in everyone, basically. And the main one is OpenAI. Like, given the high level of investment, we might see less investment over the next coming month or weeks. And there is a lot of circularity. So we might have a AI bubble as well.
When we look at financial results, when the companies are announcing their results, first thing we look at now, in the past 2 quarters, is how much they're investing in AI. That brings me also to the next question about policy, because you did mention policy, Sir Andrew, and this question is also, I'll start with you, Jay. To what extent is, there is no clear policy yet when it comes to AI. Is there fear that when we have a clearer policy, there are starting now here and there in different areas in Europe, there's a little bit of more policy. To what extent will policy hinder growth if we move forward?
Well, certainly any opportunity, you have risks, right?
Okay.
So people look at a policy, safety, security, again, those areas, which is important. But meantime, you have to also look at the priority. Not all areas should be a winner. Some areas should be a first winner. Those winners should be dependent on the major problem space.
What about the losers? We only talk about winners?
Yeah, well, losers depend on how fast you make mistakes.
Okay.
You can come back, right? To me, there's a winner based on the new opportunity and also based on the legacy opportunities.
Okay.
So some good winners, they can win a space which people don't even pay attention, right? Mm-hmm. So not just everyone is pushing the new AI, but a lot of old spaces have a major opportunity. We need to reposition that focus.
So look at the opportunities.
Yes,
what do you think, Stacey, when it comes to policy? Do you think policy regulates or hinders growth?
I mean, obviously it does hinder growth, but I think it can hinder it in ways that make the growth more positive. I do think it is important to make sure that there are guardrails around AI, but it is hard to build guardrails when we're still trying to figure out what the story of AI is and how it's going to grow the economy. And companies, I think they're investing a lot in it, but very much still figuring out how they can use it, as are all of us in this room. So I think there is a lot of uncertainty around exactly how AI will play out, what the big shifts will be, what kinds of jobs will be created, what kinds of jobs will be destroyed. And I do think regulation can help contain that and maybe lessen some of the downsides and increase the upsides. But it is really new. And I think that's why there's so much fear when there's
so much uncertainty as well.
Yes. Yeah. When there's like talk of a bubble, I mean, everybody loses their minds because I think if it is a bubble, like Marianne said, it's like the thing driving economic growth right now. And if that gets compromised, we're in trouble.
Whenever I ask, we have a lot of economical analysts on this show, and whenever I ask them about this, about the bubble, what they say is, when I ask them to compare between now and the dot-com bubble at the beginning of the 2000s, and they say there are two different things. That one was about transparency. This one is just something we don't understand yet, we don't know. But there is more transparency, at least when it comes to the companies investing. So we'll wait and see. I have an amazing panel here, and I would like to pick your brains more, but I have to share you with the floor. So if you have any questions for our guests, please feel free to ask. Please, and specify whom your question is directed, and make it short, please, and who you are.
I guess my question is for everyone, and since you're talking about policy and all, there was one particular CEO in America who said regulation hinders innovation. That CEO was the CEO of Ocean Gate, who took the submersible to Titanic. So some of my Silicon Valley friends, in tongue-in-cheek, they say that the only export of Europe in the last 20 years has been regulation. So. And whereas when we talk about right now with AI, right? So AI, there's a race to the top with innovation, and then there are certain countries which are there's a race to the bottom in regulation, and there's a push and pull of different effect. We see the H-1B visas, UK changing the rules for work visas and all the kind of things. This is a talent war and all of those things. Which countries do you think have got that balance right for that innovation and regulation, and they are doing it the right way? Not the American way, not the European way. Who is doing correctly?
Not the Chinese way. Yeah, that's also a way, right? Yeah. Who would like to take that?
I think countries like Singapore are getting that balance right between so much regulation and so much not. There's good regulation and there's bad regulation, and there are good taxes and there are bad taxes, and we ought to have learned from more than 100 years now. It was in 1923 that Professor Pigou of Cambridge University wrote a book called The Economics of Welfare. And he said, this is a good tax. This actually, putting a carbon tax on or putting a congestion charge on, that's not distorting the economy. That's removing distortions from the economy. And we should stop taxing good things like employment. We should tax bad things. That's good regulation. And so too, we need to regulate things that are dangerous. If I am polluting your children, regulations, taxes, prison time should be applied to me.
Well, I also feel like another way to think about that is correctly pricing carbon. If you look at what the cost of carbon is instead of just regulation. And I think one of the issues is we don't know what the cost of AI is yet. I mean, obviously the data centers are a big one, but
Electricity.
yeah, it's a little hard to know.
Yeah.
Yeah, one more thoughts on my side, because you mentioned like the trade-off between innovation and regulation, and I fully agree with this trade-off. But another trade-off I could see is like, would you favor consumers versus corporates, businesses? And actually, you've been mentioning Europe. We have GDPR, which is not great, especially for AI, because we won't be able to collect like a lot of data as some big countries are doing. But it's also like in order to protect consumers.
But there's also a risk with collecting all that data.
Yeah. So it's more in favor of consumers.
Yeah. Do we have any other question? Yes, please.
Thank you. It's Jürgen Sattler from the Center for Global Development in Washington. I haven't heard an answer to your question when we will see the AI revolution in macroeconomic growth and productivity. But I wanted to ask, when you look at AI, it's very much affecting the service sectors. So education, health, and the public sector. And my question is, could the AI revolution perhaps bring down the size of the public sectors and the costs of the public sectors, and therefore help to tackle the debt problem, the public debt problem?
Who will take that?
Well, I can answer part of that. I think certainly whatever we do in AI, the purpose should be efficiency, and also based on what we do in the past, we have a major improvements as what is. From government point of view, for example, regulation, look at the drug approval process. Take 12, 18 years, depending on type of drug, right? If you're talking about a novel drug. Now, 18 years, then you got 7 years a clinical trial. You cannot bypass that. But the other 10 years, 11 years, you really can help reduce the cycle, bring more new drugs to help more public patients, right? To me, that efficiency is very important. I think the government recognizes that's important. And I do believe there will be some efforts trying to make that become a major change, right, eventually. Yeah.
So when we talk about, sorry if we have more questions, but when we talk about the risk of people, of automation and AI and some people losing their jobs, the other risk that you have that people with regulation and with access to AI have an older population, and the people with the youth and the younger populations still don't have all that access. So how do you compare, and where would you invest today between the aging population with the advanced economies, or would you go to younger economies with younger population that need this access?
To me, as an educator, right, there's education is no age limit. One is lifelong learning. There's a early stage learning. There also and professional learning. To me, the university system, of course, we develop technology, we develop tools, we train the talents. I call 3T, right? Technology, tools, and talents. And then we have a general population. Like Singapore has a very good policy. Like age 42 above, you can go to the training, government supplement that cost for you to improve that skill sets, which is very good. I think there are some other countries do that. And of course, for some special education for childhood, I do believe that's something we can help a lot. For example, if you look traditional physics, learn physics, do try and error. Well, in many new areas, we can make virtual mistakes, not physical mistakes, especially when you do chemistry stuff, right? That's learn faster. So kids can learn faster, they can make virtual mistakes, then they can physically do later, physical. So I think that speed up the learning process.
Yeah,
Yes.
sorry, can I just address? Yeah, so to answer your question, on the productivity side, so I keep reading academic papers on that topic because I'm very interested in as well. And actually, all the papers I'm reading are contradicting themselves. So we don't really know the impact, but I would say the impact, I don't expect to see a big impact on the short term. Probably it will be like on the medium term. On your question about the impact on the service sector, public sector, it's a tough question, and I think it depends what you mean by AI, because by AI, some people also mean like automation. Automation is not new, and I've been living in the US for the past 5-10 years, part-time 5 years, full-time 5 years, and I keep feeling my US taxes, and actually it's a real joke. I mean, I need to feel like. Anyway, I'm sure Americans will understand what I mean, but I mean, it's such a developed economy. I can't believe that we need to fill like so many papers. Anyway, I'm French, my tax filing is almost automatic. I live in the UK, it's automatic. Everything is already pre-filled. I just need to submit it. So I think it's important to, when we talk about AI, many people are referring to automation, and for many services that the public sector offers, I think automation is there and has been there for many, many years already. On your point about the impact on debt, I don't expect AI to have a big impact on debt. I would expect stablecoins to have a bigger impact on debt, given that if I look at the biggest stablecoin issuer, which is Tether, Tether is now part of the top 20 treasury holders for the US government. So I would expect Tether to buy even more US debt looking ahead, especially given that we had in the US the Genius Act, which has been signed by President Trump in July.
We have another question.
Lourdes Casanova, director of the Emerging Markets Institute at Cornell University. I share your pain when I feel the taxes. I'm European also. And I share the pain when I have to pay the water bill with a check.
Yes.
Still today, in the US, I had never paid a water bill in Europe with a check for years. So, but my question is, how do you see this huge investment of TSMC in Arizona? So, and the consequences in two fields. Well, number one, this huge investment is behind this tremendous surge in 2025 of FDI in the US. US is by far the biggest destination of FDI. So how do you see the consequences in two fields? One, in geopolitics, you have mentioned, Marianne, geopolitics a number of times, and another one is industrial policy. So guess what? President Trump's policies are being effective or not, and the consequences.
I think that's a question for Marianne, right? Yeah? Okay.
Look at her.
But feel free to jump in, everyone. Go ahead.
Okay, on check, I have the same view. I'm paying my housing in Cambridge every year by check, and I'm thinking, my God, I'm not even sure how to sign my check because I'm not signing any check in Europe. The last check I've signed in Europe was 20 years ago. So I feel your pain. And I think the US is a great economy. I love the US, but I mean, in terms of payments, they are probably like not a leading country. TSMC, I mean, again, we are back to geopolitics because TSMC is the biggest company in Taiwan, and there are like so many tensions around Taiwan these days that it's critical, especially given that the role that semiconductors are playing. We use semiconductors everywhere. In laptops, semiconductors, dishwasher, smartphone, everywhere we use semiconductors. So, I mean, I feel the pain for the US to bring back TSMC in Arizona, not only in Arizona, but in few other countries as well, Costa Rica and so on. But it takes a lot of years. And I don't think Taiwan has a lot of incentive as well to move TSMC to the US as well, but it takes a lot of time. And actually to build a semiconductor company in the US, you need to have the skills, the labor, the people. You need to train people. It's very costly. We expect the cost to bring back the supply chain in the US to 20% in terms of prices. So it has a price as well.
I think we have about a minute to wrap up. We have a small question. A very, very small question. There's a very interesting book called The Chip Wars 2022. I think you should read it. It's related to this topic. And I think we're living it today. Quick question.
It's actually a super quick comment instead of a question, if you'll allow me. I can add a question at the end, but I won't lie, it's a comment. I really appreciated the entire conversation, including the focus on narratives. And I think it's so important, particularly in this room full of influential leaders, that we don't buy into the stereotype that Europe only exports regulation. We've heard a couple of examples of European leadership. Just wanted to underscore again how many world-class technology companies there are in Europe, how central they are for the digital transformation from ASML to ARM to SAP. Europe is home to the leading pharmaceutical companies in the world. You take a country like Switzerland, where I live, the Swiss currency is only going in one direction, going up even faster than the dollar.
Yes.
And Swiss manufactured exports are increasing and not decreasing. So let's remind ourselves there's a lot of innovation in Europe. There's a lot of talent in Europe. What we need to make sure European capital actually funds that innovation and that talent, rather than repeating the narrative about Europe only exporting regulation.
Okay. All right, please. Yeah.
I agree with you 100%. Thank you for saying that.
Me too.
But just before we end, I wanted to make a slightly different point. You know, we've talked about growth as if it's homogenous, but and we're saying only 3.2%. Wow, that's small. Well, if you grow at 3% for 100 years, as we did last century, your GDP in real terms goes up 20 times, 20-fold. And we're on track for another 3% this century, another 20-fold, 20 times 20, 400-fold increase in the human footprint on the world, unless we grow differently. And we ought to be also talking about the quality. I think we should be growing at least 3%, hopefully 4%, but it shouldn't weigh so much. You know, last century of the 20-fold increase, roughly, it was 20-fold increase in what we took out of the ground. It was 20-fold increase in what we manufactured. It was a 20-fold increase in what we consumed and a 20-fold increase in what we discarded. Okay. If we do that this decade, this century, we're in big trouble. We should remember that actually it's not just stuff that's GDP, it's the opera. You know, it's going on vacation. It's coming here. So this is GDP we're having right this minute. And we need more of that and less of the stuff.
So to wrap up, because I don't think we have enough time, we've linked growth to quality. Maybe that's a good way to end this session. Thank you very much, dear panelists, for being here with us today. And thank you, our sweet audience, for listening on.